All you goats in the U.S. better watch out because Dr. Brinkley is coming for you.
We've got a new demand for glands.
Dude, goat glands are going to be more valuable than gold at this point.
Exactly.
Forget the gold standard. Give me gold testicles.
We're on the goat gland standard. Come on.
Ooh, hell yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unbelievable. I am Doctor of Electric Medicine, Kurt Danner, joined here by German archaeologist Luis Mejia.
Hello.
And this is the podcast where I tell Luis one true story and one false story from history.
And it's up to me to figure out which is which.
Luis, I am super excited for today's episode, even though I will say season 3 not going great for me so far. It's 2-0 for you at the moment, but I'm going to be honest, nothing could ruin my good mood right now. I'm just super excited to tell you these stories.
I will say, Kurt, you're starting the podcast with a uncharacteristically optimistic reading of the intro. So, I mean, this is already boding fairly well for you. I don't know if in terms of results, but at least in terms of attitude, I think you're approaching this the way that you should.
Yeah, I'm just ready to get rolling. So, before I tell you these wild stories, are you ready to get us started off? Do you have a little fast fact for me that may be true, may be false?
I do have a fast fact for you indeed, as with every episode. Now, Kurt, true or false? Actually, I'm not even going to start this with true or false. I'm just going to give you a couple of options, Kurt.
Okay.
Are you familiar with oysters?
Yes, familiar with their work.
Are you familiar with the plant nightshade?
Yeah, that's poison, right?
Yeah, that's right. Are you also familiar with the concept of twigs?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the weirdest cake recipe ever, Luis.
Now, are you familiar with the Roman Empire? You're a white man in your 20s. Of course you are.
I've done some thinking.
Constantly on the mind right now, and if it wasn't, you're welcome. Now, Kurt, what if I were to tell you that all of these items that I've just named were items that were inserted into the female genitalia of Roman women to induce one of the following: pregnancy, increase libido, or stop seizures? True or false?
Wait, the Roman Empire is one of the things that was inserted, or that's just a piece of information for me?
No, that's just an extra part of information, Kurt. The Roman Empire is already within us all.
That's so true. Okay, so we got twigs,
yeah,
poisonous plants, and oysters.
That's right.
And this is for either fertility, pregnancy, or what was the other option?
Or curing seizures.
I'm gonna go with pregnancy. I'm going big swing. I think it's pregnancy. Honestly, the seizures is tempting because I feel like that's very close to like, ooh, hysteria, seizures and stuff. But no, I think this is like some kind of fertility ritual. Like, this will get you pregnant. Pop the oyster in there.
Pop just an oyster in there. Of course, it wouldn't be clammed up, right? Like, you open the oyster and you throw that in there.
No, it's the slippery boy.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, boneless.
Well, Kurt, I'm happy to tell you that none of these are true.
I didn't know that was an option. You're playing dirty.
Yeah, well, you should have thought outside the box for once, Kurt. I don't know.
I should have known when you said the Roman Empire was getting inserted in there. I mean, that was just ridiculous.
Ridiculous, Kurt. I insert the Roman Empire into myself each morning with each shower.
That's why you have no seizures.
Listen, look at me. That's why I'm the most well-adjusted man I know.
Proof positive.
Well, anyway, Kurt, I mean, of course, there were different cures and ailments for sorts of things like pregnancy, and not even that. The Roman Empire physicians had the idea that you could insert different items and consume different herbs, potions, etc. to not just increase your likelihood of being pregnant, but also potentially determine the sex of your child. So still yet to be confirmed whether or not that's true, whether or not, I don't know, eating like a pound of walnuts will mean your child is a boy. But, you know.
There's only one way to find out.
Exactly. Kurt, start eating some walnuts. Your advanced pregnancy needs it.
You know, I will say, as an interesting little note, I don't know the specifics, unfortunately, but I do know that there's some things where it was like, mostly I think to test whether or not a woman was pregnant, where it was like, pee on the bladder of a goat or something. And some of them actually do work. Like, they have like a 90% accuracy. So some of those ancient remedies were kind of like they figured out the right thing. But that's not to say I'm supporting the oyster twigs nightshade
I will
stuff.
I will say I would love to confirm this, but these days I think it's a little bit more difficult to procure the bladder of a goat to pee on. And maybe that's what maybe that's the barrier we're hitting, right? Like, we could all be more in the know about what's going on in our bodies if we only had access to intestines and internal organs of different animals.
That's true. The cost of a CVS pregnancy test, what's that, like $30?
Yeah.
The cost of a goat bladder, just you have to carry around the knowledge of what you've done to the goat. But
that's right.
What is that? Who among us?
It's these types of conversations, Kurt, that make you look back at the past and you say, wow, they really had it all figured out, didn't they?
Yeah, they had it right.
It wasn't until capitalism came in and ruined it for all of us.
They took away our goat bladders.
I could be peeing on a goat bladder right now. And what am I doing? I'm a man in my mid-20s recording a podcast.
We have no way of knowing whether or not Luis is pregnant because he has access to goat bladders. Now,
that's right.
That being said, I don't want to move past the fact that this is twice in a row now that you just made up some wild fast fact to present to me, which I feel is very attacking, Luis. You're really after me. Even though you're winning, you're still trying to break me down even further. But I'm not gonna sink to your level because these stories are so good. I just want to share them with you, and we'll see what happens. Okay, let's just get a little wild. All right, so.
Let's do it.
With that being said, you ready to dive into it? Now, the first story, and this is exciting because this is a story about Vikings.
Yeah, hell yeah.
It has taken us quite a while on this podcast. We've done a lot of episodes and there's been no stories about Vikings, as fun of a topic as that is. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons for that probably is because Vikings historically not great record keepers. So most of the information that we know about them comes from other people's historical accounts or a lot of like works of fiction that are based on true events. And these accounts will often conflict with each other. And then there's, of course, all these missing details where it's like this guy just disappeared for 30 years. We're not really sure what he was doing in that time.
Listen, I think we can give a little bit more credit to the Vikings. Surely they were great record keepers, but it wasn't until the Christians came in that they decided you are not keeping these records. I think we just want to make sure that that's clear and out there. No disrespect to the Vikings, but
no disrespect to the Vikings.
We could have more records if Jesus Christ was never born. All I'm saying.
Well, whatever the case may be, you will hear me say at some points in the story, allegedly, or it's either this or that, because some of the details here are unconfirmed or we're not sure which it is.
But
nonetheless, I have done a lot of research into Viking history, and this is a truly unbelievable story about Vikings, okay?
Ew.
Let's do it. So to get started here, Luis, I want to talk a little bit about a man who's probably one of the most famous Vikings of all time, Ragnar Lothbrok. Is this a familiar name to you?
It's familiar to me because when we were living together in college, Kurt, we adopted a bat. I don't know if you remember this.
We had a bat?
Or actually, a bat adopted us.
We did have a bat. I forgot about this.
Every evening, a baby bat would come into our windowsill and sit there and just hang out, and we would nurture it back to health. I don't think it was unhealthy, but being next to our apartment, it probably was.
Its obsession with us was unhealthy, yeah.
Certainly. And, it was around this time that a lot of our friends also were in similar situations where they were adopting bats, funny enough.
It was in.
And I know that one of our mutual friends whose bats they adopted named it Ragnar. And so in honor of that bat, we named our adopted bat also Ragnar, but Ragnar 2. I don't know if you recall this.
Right, yeah. Ragnar 2 Electric Boogaloo. That's right.
That's right. And first Ragnar 1 tragically passed away. And Ragnar 2 left us and never to be seen again. But that's my only, I guess, image of the name Ragnar that first comes into my head.
Okay, well, that's truly a wealth of information about this guy, Luis. Thanks for that contribution.
Yeah,
Let me tell you about
anytime.
the actual Ragnar number 1, all right?
OG Ragnar.
So Ragnar Lothbrok, the man, not a bat.
Right.
He lived in the 9th century, and there's slightly differing accounts of Ragnar's life, but they all agree that he had a pretty great time invading and raiding kingdoms all over Europe.
Classic Vikings.
Classic. His last conquest was sometime around the year 835, and he sailed down the Seine River raiding villages in what is today France. At the time, it was the Kingdom of the Franks.
Mm-hmm.
The plan presumably was to sail all the way to Paris, but unfortunately for Ragnar, before he could get there, he was captured and executed, and allegedly he was executed via the Blood Eagle method. Luis, do you know what the Blood Eagle method is?
I am so eager to find this out. As someone that's a fan of execution methods, as we talked last episode, where we were even able to get executed by a monkey.
That's true.
This is This is interesting to me. What is the blood eagle method?
The blood eagle method is where the victim is laid flat on their stomach, then the executioner cuts a hole in their back, cuts through the rib cage, and then pulls their lungs out through the hole to be spread out like wings. Then usually they like hang the person on display for a little while. I say allegedly on this because there's only one account that mentions that he was executed by the blood eagle method. And there's actually some debate on whether the blood eagle method ever really happened at all, because honestly it doesn't seem super feasible, and the victim would probably like be dead halfway through this, so it's mostly just for like performance sake.
Yeah, but you know, like executions back in the day were mostly for performance.
That's true. There's not a lot going on.
Right. Why did we need to draw someone with horses or like break them with a wheel? No need.
In a world that's, you know, pre-Avengers movies, you got to get people to come out for something, right?
That's right.
There's got to be something going on. But either way, by execution by whatever method, Ragnar is dead, and his sons are fairly pissed off about this. So 4 of Ragnar's 5 sons stop whatever else they were in the middle of and organize a revenge campaign on the kingdom of Franks. So by the time we get to 845, we've got the Viking band back together.
Yeah.
And Ragnar's sons in attendance include Sigurd Snake and Eye, Vitserk, Bjorn Ironside, and Ivar the Boneless.
Perfect.
So, Luis, let me tell you a couple fun facts about Ivar the Boneless, okay? Because you might be wondering why he's called Ivar the Boneless. So
it's a good name.
Yeah, it's a great name, I think. Apparently, he had some sort of condition that made his legs break really easily.
Nice.
According to some legends, this was because of a curse placed on his mother, but whatever. Either way, doesn't seem to slow Ivar down much. In fact, he's a berserker. Luis, do you know what a Viking berserker is?
I can take a guess if you'll allow me.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, are they the ones that like run in head first to battles?
Yeah, that's a good description. They're Viking warriors that would be overtaken by this rage and become like superhuman in battle. So I actually have a quote about this. It's pretty interesting. This fury was called Berserkergang, and it occurred not only in the heat of battle, but also during laborious work. Men who were thus seized performed things which otherwise seemed impossible for human power. This condition is said to have begun with shivering, chattering of the teeth, and chill in the body, and then the face swelled and changed its color. With this was connected a great hot-headedness, which at last gave over to a great rage, under which they howled as wild animals, bit the edge of their shield, and cut down everything they met without discrimination between friend or foe. When this condition ceased, a great dulling of the mind and feebleness followed, which could last for 1 or several days. So this is like a whole transformation that they're undergoing.
Yeah, I mean, you're just describing a night of us drinking together, if I'm being fully honest, including the 4-day hangover.
You know, it's funny you say that because there's some theories that Vikings may have used alcohol, magic mushrooms, or other hallucinogenic plants, or even a combination of these things to induce this.
Thank
so,
God.
you know, this kind of goes back to that we don't really know a lot of the details about Viking history.
Right.
But there is evidence that points to maybe like this was not just like a mental state that they worked themselves into, that they were actually taking some sort of intoxicating thing and then maybe just like having, you know, a magic mushroom trip while they're in battle.
Yeah, it is said that if you go into a berserker rage while pregnant, your child will come out a boy. Funny enough.
That is true, but you have to have the Roman Empire inserted in you at the time. I don't know if you read that.
That's right. That's right.
So all this to say that despite his squishy leg bones, Ivar is a truly terrifying figure. He doesn't care that his legs are frequently breaking, evidently. He's consuming whatever and going out there as a wild man. Okay, now the second cool thing about Ivar the Boneless is that Ivar allegedly wielded a sword of legend. This sword originally belonged to Ivar's great-grandfather, who was a man named Halfdan Redbeard, who was either king or prince of Sweden, depending on which account you're reading.
His name was Halfdan?
Halfdan Redbeard.
I thought it was like halfway a man named Dan.
Yeah, it is like it reads like half Dan.
Oh, half Dan.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, he's one half of a Dan, but with a full red beard.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, according to legend, this sword had been pulled from a boiling river, which it never completely cooled from, and it would become hotter when it was washed in blood in battle.
Whoa.
So Halfdan Redbeard had this sword, and he named it Heiter Svigi, which translates to boiled blade, or through the power of a little bit of artistic interpretation, Luis, it can also translate to hot rod.
Yes.
Which I think is amazing.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
So, being the special weapon that hot rod is, it's kept in the family and eventually passed down to Ivar the Boneless. So, Ivar the Boneless has got two things, which are breaky leg bones and a boiling sword.
Yeah.
So, we got all our Vikings and their fancy weapons. Look out, Kingdom of Franks, here we come. Since Ragnar's invasion of the Kingdom of Franks, they had a little internal disagreement that led to the kingdom being divided up into 3 pieces. So, the boys are actually going to attack the West Kingdom of Franks. I doubt they really care about the distinction there. They end up following the same route that their father did along the Seine, and the brothers eventually reach Paris and attack in the Paris siege of 845.
Good year.
Now, unfortunately, Luis, this does not end in the exciting way that you would think a Viking revenge campaign probably would.
Okay.
Instead, they reached a treaty in 846 that gave the Vikings some land and some villages on the northern coast of the West Kingdom of Franks in exchange for not attacking anymore.
That's boring. I wanted more blood eagles.
I know. Where's the blood? Come on, bring out the blood
Blood
eagles.
eagles as far as the eye can see. I want this room filled up to my arm with blood eagles.
Exactly. That's what we were rooting for. But it's not over yet, okay? Hang on. Maybe we can get some more bloodshed in here. And there's also a little note about this land that they're given that it borders the Kingdom of Burgundy, which was formerly the middle piece of the Kingdom of Franks. So maybe the Vikings can go attack over there and leave West Kingdom of Franks alone. Now, arguably more important than all this is that during the siege of Paris, somehow the blade of Hytersvigi was broken.
No.
Oh no.
Oh no.
R.I.P. Hot Rod.
No, it's just half. It's half Dan's, half Rod.
It's half Dan's, half Hot Rod.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, Ivar the Boneless, perhaps with a bit of a flair for the dramatic, keeps wearing the broken sword, and according to some stories, even uses it in some future raids. Aside from all this, after the treaty is signed, things settle down for a while. Ivar the Boneless and 2 sons of Bjorn Ironside become the new protectors of Normandy. That's the land they have. Ivar's brothers leave and presumably go back to whatever they were doing before. And so now Ivar is in charge of Normandy along with these other sons of Bjorn Ironside. The people of Normandy would soon learn that Ivar could be a little bit unpredictable. So these are some stories from his time in charge.
So are his bones.
That's true, which you'll see right here.
Oh no.
On one occasion, it was said that Ivar the Boneless tripped over a pig that was running loose in the street.
Damn it.
According to some sources, he broke his leg doing this, which classic Ivar.
Hate it when that happens.
Either way, Ivar then called his guards and proceeded to go door to door in surrounding villages, killing every pig they found. So he was like, let me just carry out this vendetta. You know, the man only knows revenge campaigns. That's what his bread and butter is. One account tells a story of a visiting nobleman who complained about the poor quality of wine. Ivar allegedly force-fed him grapes, then picked the man up and shook him until he vomited, which points for style on that one.
Yeah, nice. His legs didn't break doing this? What's going on?
No, his legs intact. Legs intact through
How boneless was this man?
And finally, sometime near the end of his life, Ivar had fallen ill and was mostly bedridden. A man named Hagen, who was one of the people who was in charge of taking care of the day-to-day affairs while Ivar was sick, supposedly suggested that maybe it might be time for a change of leadership. Now, when Ivar heard this, he took Hydersfigi, aka Hot Rod, got out of bed, and when he found Hagen, split him in half at the waist with a single swing.
Oh.
You know, I think I had it right earlier when I said a flair for the dramatic, this guy. When Ivar died sometime at the end of the 9th century, many of his possessions were buried with him, including Hydersfigi. There's no record of exactly where he was buried, but, you know, presumably it's somewhere in Normandy. And now, this is, of course, the end of Ivar the Boneless, but this is not the end of the story because, Luis, when you hear Normandy, Vikings are probably not the first thing you think of. Can you think of anyone else who occupied Normandy for a little bit?
U.S.-backed Allied troops in World War II.
Before that?
No.
The Nazis.
Ah, right. No, that. Oh, yeah, you're right. Whenever you said before that, I went too far. Like
5 minutes
years.
before that.
Right.
Okay, well, I had to lead you to that one a little bit, but either way, Luis, you may or may not know this interesting tidbit about the Nazis, that they were hard at work looking for ancient mythological artifacts, and this was kind of for a dual purpose. This could, one, support this history of Aryan supremacy that they were trying to basically make up on the spot,
right?
But, you know, there were some people who also believed that, like, if the legends were true, maybe they could find some mythical artifact that would win them the war. The Nazis did carry out unsuccessful searches for the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, the Lost City of Atlantis, and Thor's Hammer.
All of the Indiana Jones movies go over this in great detail, great historical detail.
All the Indiana Jones classics. Exactly. Now, those were unsuccessful, but they did successfully get a few artifacts, including the Spear of Destiny, which is also known as the Holy Lance. This is allegedly the spear that Jesus was stabbed with on the cross, and legend also has it that King Charlemagne used it to win 47 battles in a row until he dropped it one day and fell dead the same day. The spear was in a museum in Vienna until the Nazis got it. Another artifact they got was the Bayeux tapestry. It's this embroidered cloth nearly 250 feet long that depicts the events surrounding the Norman conquest of England in 1066.
Yeah.
This tapestry was successfully hidden in the Louvre until the Nazis found it in 1944. And also in 1944, the Nazis claimed to have found the burial site of Ivar the Boneless, which would presumably mean they also found Hyther's Figi.
Half Hot Rod.
Hot Rod is back, baby. Now, the Bayeux tapestry was recovered when the Allies retook the Louvre. The Spear of Destiny was recovered after the war and taken back to Vienna. But Luis, Hot Rod was never found. So maybe the Nazis never had it because the Allies never intercepted any messages that referred to the sword by name. It's just presumed that it was buried with Ivar the Boneless. But there's also the other possibility that maybe the Nazis still have it.
To this day?
You know, many of the artifacts and pieces of art stolen during the war were never recovered because when a lot of people in the Nazi high command realized they were going to lose the war, they put these things in hiding or gave them to people to keep safe. So if you like to believe in a more magical world, as I know you do, Luis,
Yeah, that's right.
it's possible Hot Rod is still out there in someone's attic in Argentina.
And I can find it somewhere.
And you can find it. And you're the man who's going to find it. This should be the new Indiana Jones movie. Show us Hot Rod. Come on.
You know, I feel like I would be like Indiana Jones, but instead of, like going on great adventures to find these ancient artifacts, I would just meet random people at a bar and get them to open up to me, drunkenly saying, well, I do have the sword of Ivar the Boneless. And I'm like, you can't possibly mean the half Hot Rod. And when they inevitably turn to me, pound a glass of whiskey and say, oh, that's when we're getting somewhere.
Now, that's what I think you believe about yourself, Luis, but I feel like maybe this is a more accurate depiction. Tell me, okay? You'd go out, have a wild night, this whole on-the-spot escapade that ends in recovering the broken half of the Hot Rod, and then wake up in the morning to discover you'd just been wandering around a Costco parking lot holding a stick the whole night.
Okay, well, if I believed it in the moment, Kurt, I don't see why anything's different,
Hey, ignorance is bliss, baby. Come on.
That's right. That's right. If I was happy at that moment, believing that I have the other half of the half Hot Rod.
That's so true. Where's the tip half? It broke off in the Paris siege. Maybe somebody's got blade part of Hot Rod.
Listen, I've been to Paris once in my life, and I found a really nice shiny stick.
That could be it.
Or a nice shiny piece of metal.
That's it.
Who knows? Who knows, man?
We can't disprove it.
Someone contact Vienna. Someone call Oslo. Get Oslo on the phone. I've got a great discovery.
We've got the Hot Rod. We're in possession of the Hot Rod. Okay, Luis, so the Viking story was a lot of fun, but I will say it was on the shorter side. And, I also did say that a lot of the details we don't have. It's too bad when there's like a crazy story that you wish you could know all the juicy details of, but you can't get them. But not to worry, because this next story is truly the gift that keeps on giving, okay? We've got all kinds of detail in here, all right?
You got thorough with this bad boy?
Oh, it's thorough and extensive, okay?
Ooh. How I like it.
Let me start you off with a little riddle to pique your interest, Luis, okay? So, riddle me this, Luis, my boy. What do goat testicles, Mexican radio stations, and Benito Mussolini all have in common? Any guesses?
These are all things that you have to insert to yourself to determine whether or not you're pregnant.
How did you know that? That's crazy. No, incorrect. The answer is a man named John Brinkley, okay? Which by the end of this story, you will understand how all these things are interconnected, all right?
Okay.
Now, before I tell you about our boy John Brinkley, let me give you a little background about his father, John Brinkley Sr., okay? So John Brinkley Sr. lived in the mountains of North Carolina. He served as a medic for the Confederacy in the Civil War. He had 5 marriages. One was annulled, and the other 4 wives died, which is totally not suspicious at all. But either way, he's on marriage number 6 now to a woman named Sarah Mingus. this, okay?
This is the good one.
This is the one that's going to stick.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
During their marriage, Sarah's 24-year-old niece, who is named Sarah Burnett, came to live with them. So since they're both named Sarah, to avoid confusion, they refer to the wife Sarah as Sally, all right?
Okay.
So somehow Sarah Burnett, this is niece Sarah, gets pregnant by John Brinkley Sr.
Somehow. No one knows why.
Somehow, because we don't know the details. And I'm not like skirting around it, but I have no idea if there was consent involved in this or not. We're up in the mountains of North Carolina right now. The history is not documented on this, but
That's right.
she got pregnant by this man and in 1885 gave birth to John Romulus Brinkley. So his middle name, Romulus. This is, of course, named after the mythical founder and first king of Rome who was raised by wolves, according to one legend.
Good stuff.
This is like really calling your shot here, you know?
Yeah, really. It's wishful thinking.
It is, but, you know, we'll see. Maybe it'll pan out. Now, Sarah Burnett dies of pneumonia and tuberculosis when John is 5. Double whammy there, pneumonia and tuberculosis. And then John Brinkley Sr. dies when John is 10. So ultimately, John is taken care of by wife Sarah, who he refers to as Aunt Sally. For the record, she's actually his great aunt and also stepmother.
Nice.
Despite being extremely poor, it does seem that John got a fairly decent education. He attended a one-room log cabin schoolhouse, and the only detail that's relevant that we know from this time is that while he was there, he met a girl named Sally White, who apparently has the richest dad in town.
Oh.
And Sally enjoyed tormenting John at every opportunity. So maybe he's got like a little grade school crush action going on here. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's like a Peanuts situation.
Something, but
You know, she kept pulling the football right out of John's feet whenever he was about to kick.
that's so true. Be that as it may, he finishes school at 16, and John really wanted to become a doctor, but that wasn't really an option for him because of his social standing. So instead, he teaches himself how to use a telegraph and moves to New York to work as a telegrapher for Western Union. Pretty quickly, he then moved to New Jersey to work for various railway companies, and finally in 1906, John Brinkley returned to North Carolina after learning that great-aunt stepmom Sally was sick. She died December 1906,
No.
and so tragically, John is left with no surviving relatives by the age of 21. Now, after his mother's death, John is comforted by none other than grade school crush Sally White.
Hey.
And this apparently ignited some old passions, and so they decide to get married 1 month later in January 1907.
Nothing pulls or nothing gets the emotions rolling, the passion flowing, much like grief, you know?
It does seem like she really swooped in on him.
That's what I'm going to say.
Also, I don't know what's going on here, but it's like when one Sally Brinkley dies, another is chosen, you know? Because, like, there was a Sally Brinkley, she died. 1 month later, this woman is legally Sally Brinkley. Like, I don't know. Is that some sort of balance of the force of the universe?
She's the Dalai Lama of rural America, early 1900s.
Yes, the Midwest Dalai Lama, Sally Brinkley. So they get married. After getting married, they spend a little while traveling around to rural towns, posing as Quaker doctors, giving medicine shows and selling fake medicine and potions. They even have like a whole song and show routine they'll do with this.
Awesome.
Finally, they settle in Chicago and give birth to a daughter named Wanda. John enrolls in Bennett Medical College, and Bennett Medical College is an unaccredited college that teaches eclectic medicine. So at this point, he's basically like majoring in being a medicine man. This is in the time period where, you know, what counts as a medical college is kind of flimsy.
I was going to say, I mean, eclectic medicine at this point is just, you know, medicine, right?
Yeah, well, it's like...
Or was it eclectic for the time, too?
It's eclectic for the time, too, but there's, like, not a distinction between, you know, what we would now consider actual good medicine and this, like, kind of, oh, maybe you can use, like, herbs or whatever weird stuff to cure.
Right.
There just wasn't really any regulation on this stuff. So
Oysters.
Oysters. He's getting taught, you know, use the oysters in the Roman Empire in that bad boy. The one specific thing that we know about John's time from Bennett Medical College is that he became very interested in glands and glandular extracts, and this was a lot of what he studied.
Okay.
I also have a fun little side note just for you and I, Luis, that Bennett Medical School would later become the Loyola School of Medicine, which, of course, you and I, both former Loyola Chicago graduates. So we've seen this building.
Hey.
We've been to the location where this man was studying glands.
Hold on. Ooh. I never thought I'd get so excited for glands.
So John would go to classes during the day and work as a telegrapher for Western Union during the night to make ends meet. Despite this, between tuition, the cost of raising a family, and it seems like Sally does not understand that she's not rich anymore. Remember, she formerly had the richest dad in town.
Right.
John is going deeper and deeper into debt. Now, also adding to his stress, in 1908, Sally gave birth to a son that died 3 days later. So that's, just a really difficult thing to happen to anyone. And after finishing his second year of classes, John was pretty deep in debt. So he spends the summer of 1909 working double shifts at Western Union. Once he gets his first paycheck, he gives it to Sally. She then takes the paycheck and their daughter Wanda and leaves John with only $1.10.
Nice. Girl boss.
Girl boss. She files for divorce. John is ordered to pay child support, which he does for 2 months. But then he kidnaps his daughter Wanda during a visitation and flees to Montreal, Canada, because someone told him that Canada wouldn't extradite a father for kidnapping his daughter. What?
Who do you go to advice for this? Was he just randomly talking to a person that said, hey, did you know that in Canada won't extradite you if you kidnap your child? And then in that moment, he stared straight into the camera and just goes, and that's when I knew I had to go to Montreal.
Oh, so you think that's bad advice then, Luis? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not saying it's bad. It was helpful for the time. I'm just wondering where he procured this information.
Yeah, because I was going to tell you, this turns out to be true.
Hey.
Canada won't extradite him. So Sally ends up basically having to negotiate directly with John in order to get her daughter back. And this ultimately results in Sally ending the divorce procedure and the couple going back to being married in Chicago, basically like nothing ever happened.
Whoa. Oh, that's an awkward family dinner.
Seriously, yeah. So Sally left him again in 1911 and moved back to North Carolina, but John followed her there and they got back together again. Then in 1912, John decided to pull a little Uno reverse and left Sally and their now 2 daughters to move to St. Louis, Missouri and try to finish his medical education. He did have a problem though. Bennett Medical School refused to share his transcripts unless he paid the tuition that he owed him, because remember, he was deep in debt that he kind of dipped out on. So he was not able to enroll in any schools because he couldn't get his transcripts. So instead, he decided to buy a diploma from a diploma mill known as the Kansas City Eclectic Medical University. And this diploma mill thing, this is even shadier than Bennett, because at least Bennett was trying to teach something and it's more just like they're teaching kind of pseudo medicine. This is like he's just buying a fake ID to practice medicine, basically.
He's going to University of Phoenix Online of the 1910s.
He's paying his $500 fee and getting handed a medical degree. I mean, it's really flimsy. Now, after this, John returned to North Carolina and got back together with Sally.
Again.
They had another daughter. Then the 5 of them moved back to Chicago. At this point, Sally asked John to stop trying to be a doctor, to which he says no, to which she says, well, goodbye. So Sally takes the kids and leaves him for a final time in 1913. Yeah, this is the one that sticks. And at this point, John does what many recently divorced men do. He moves to South Carolina and opens up a shop called Greenville Electromedic Doctors with the help of a man named James Crawford. Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's time to get wild.
Nice.
So John and James placed ads that read, "Are you a manly man full of vigor?" And apparently the ad would go on to say that if you're lacking vigor, you got to come down and get a shot from the Electromedic Doctors. So Dr. John Brinkley would give patients shots of colored water for $25 each. This is an equivalent of $800 in today's money.
My God.
And John and James claimed that the shots were either an antibiotic drug known as Salvarsan or, quote, electric medicine from Germany.
Okay.
Oh, come on. I might actually pay $800 to get a shot of some electric medicine from Germany. Are you kidding me, dude?
I think I've gotten that at a bar before.
Now, this seems like a pretty sweet setup, but after 2 months, John and James skipped town due to unpaid rent, utility bills, and debts owed to over 30 local merchants. They fled to Memphis, where John Brinkley pretty much immediately met this woman named Minnie Jones, who was the daughter of a local physician. And after a grand total of 4 days of flirting, they decided it was time to get hitched, so they get married at the Peabody Hotel in Memphis.
We've all been there, Kurt. Please, no judgment.
No, there's no judgment in this whatsoever. We've all had a wild weekend in Memphis. Come on. Now, the problem for John here was that this was technically illegal because John was actually still married to Sally. They never finalized the divorce. But nonetheless, John and Minnie go off on a honeymoon until they get interrupted in Knoxville, Tennessee, where John somehow gets arrested and extradited back to Greenville, South Carolina.
Damn it.
For practicing medicine without a license and writing bad checks. To be fair, it actually hasn't been that long since that happened. This is still the same year that Sally left him. This all happened in 1913.
Oh my God.
So in 1913, Sally left him. He goes to Greenville, does the electric medicine from Germany scheme, goes to Memphis, marries Minnie, goes on a honeymoon, then gets arrested and extradited back to South Carolina. Man, he's a busy guy.
This man's on a roll. He's got things to do, and he is not about to wait for anyone. I respect it.
So after getting arrested, John somehow manages to put most of the blame on James Crawford, his associate. They both end up doing a bit of jail time. Then John also manages to convince James Crawford to pay most of the money they owe to the local merchants and whatnot. So he's really a slippery guy. But finally they return to Memphis. And when John gets back to Memphis, Sally is waiting to confront John and Minnie about the fact that she's still married to John.
Oh, come on.
Which she's completely correct about.
Yeah,
For some reason, John ignores this fact and doesn't finalize the divorce for another 2 years until 1969, when Minnie's like, hey, maybe it'd be cool for you to stop being married to another woman. I don't know. And John's like, okay, I guess I'll go sign the document.
Just a thought.
Just an idea.
For your consideration.
But this is the point where things do start to go a little better for John. So over the next few years, he gets a little more school, which evidently adds up to enough education for him to be licensed to practice medicine in 8 states. He actually starts making some money for the first time in his life. And he does have this brief, rough little period where in 1917, John got called to serve in World War I because he's in the Army Reserves. But after only 2 days of serving as chief medical officer, he suffered a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized and then sent home a month later. So he saw, really a full 2 days of real World War I only as a doctor. Either way, after this, John and Minnie moved to Milford, Kansas after seeing an ad in the newspaper that the town needed a doctor. So in Milford, Kansas, John opens up a 16-room clinic. The population of Milford is actually only about 200, so 16 rooms is probably enough. And he pretty immediately becomes a beloved town doctor.
Nice.
He pays really good wages. He gives a lot of money to the town. And in 1918, when the flu pandemic, aka Spanish flu, happened, he made house calls to patients who were too sick to leave and apparently actually did some good doctoring. So he saved lots of lives in 1918. Now, there was an idea that John Brinkley had been obsessed with since he had briefly worked as an on-site doctor for the Kansas City Swift meatpacking plant some years earlier. So during his time at the meatpacking plant, John had learned that goats are immune to many human diseases, and the U.S. meat inspectors would determine the quality of a carcass by examining the glands of it. And allegedly, in over 500,000 goat carcasses at the Swift plant, they had never seen diseased goat glands. So John is kind of sitting on this idea of the power of goat glands. He's ready to unlock the secret powers that might be in these goats.
Good.
And just 2 weeks into living in Milford, he got the chance to do this. So there's conflicting accounts of how this went down, but generally this is the story. A farmer came into the clinic and asked Brinkley if he could cure impotence, and Dr. Brinkley either jokingly or seriously suggested that if the farmer had a goat's testicular glands, then his problems would be solved. But somehow Dr. Brinkley does end up surgically implanting a testicle from one of the farmer's goats into the farmer's scrotum.
Oh?
To which the farmer says, success! Because the farmer allegedly paid Dr. Brinkley $150 for the procedure, but claimed he would have paid more if he could afford it because he's that happy with the results.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hey.
After this success, Dr. Brinkley started regularly performing goat testicle implantation surgery for $750 a pop. This is $11,000 in today's money.
God.
And the specifics of this surgery are pretty bleak, I'll tell you. So
Yikes.
the conditions in the clinic were far from sterile, and according to accounts, Dr. Brinkley regularly operated while drunk. He's, a real gamer.
Seriously, he operates better when he's 6 beers in.
Exactly. You don't understand. This is the only way he can do this operation. He doesn't know when he's sober.
Yeah. Why does he have 100% success rate? It's because he's wasted.
Now, during the surgery, Dr. Brinkley would make a small incision in the patient's testicular sac. Then he would basically just stick the goat testicles in there and stitch them up. So it's not like getting attached to anything.
God.
And reportedly, he's implanting, quote, a goat reproductive gland, which is just a part of the testicles. But he uses different words at different times. And the various reports of the surgery seem to describe that it's at least like most of a goat testicle that he's implanting. So I'm not really inclined to cut him any slack. I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think he just had a whole goat goat testicle.
I mean, also, like, does it really make a difference if it's just a slight bit of a goat testicle or a full goat testicle? At the end of the day, you're still putting goat balls in your balls.
That's so true.
You know? Like, are we just splitting hairs here with how much of a goat's testicle you're getting implanted? I wouldn't, personally.
Are we just splitting goat testicles? He also performed a version of the surgery for women where he would implant goat ovaries into women's abdomens or near their ovaries. So, he's diversifying the procedure here. Now, 3 months after his first goat testicle surgery, the farmer returned with excellent news. His wife had given birth to a baby boy, so the goat testicle surgery has worked.
The only bad part is that kid had goat hoofs. No legs, no feet, just hoofs.
That's a necessary evil. This is the moment when maybe John Brinkley decided that goat testicle surgery might just be the answer for everything. So he starts advertising his surgery as a cure for 27 different ailments, including, but not limited to, dementia, emphysema, high blood pressure, hardening of the arteries, kidney disease, mumps-induced sterility, and flatulence.
Nice.
So it's like, whatever you got, come in here and get this goat testicle, baby.
You fart too much? Here's a goat testicle.
And he also hires an advertising agent who starts a direct mail campaign promoting his treatment as turning impotent men into, quote, the ram that am with every lamb. This guy, come on. Come on.
Wow. Oh, jeez.
Now, this aggressive advertising draws the attention of the American Medical Association, or the AMA for short. The AMA sends over an undercover agent to Dr. Brinkley's clinic in Milford, and in the clinic, the agent meets a woman who is struggling to walk who had been implanted with goat ovaries in order to cure a spinal tumor. Now, as insane as this is, there's not really anything the AMA can do at this point, but this incident does put Dr. Brinkley on the AMA's radar, and specifically, it draws the attention of a doctor named Morris Fishbane. So remember this name. This will be important later.
Okay. I'm losing it, Kurt. I'm losing it. I'm so invested. No one can see me, but I'm actually laying on the floor listening to Kurt tell me this story, and it's special for sure. I feel like a kid during story time.
Okay, so with no one to stop the goat gland doctor, Dr. Brinkley's fame continues growing. He does a demonstration in Chicago where he transplanted goat testicles into 36 patients while the press observed. And then in 1922, the owner of the LA Times, a man who was named Henry Chandler, invited Dr. Brinkley to LA to perform his surgery on one of the Times editors. And this is kind of like as a challenge that he wants him to prove if this is, a legitimate thing or not.
Yeah.
So after the surgery is successful, the LA Times published it in their paper. And with this publicity, Dr. Brinkley found himself with a flood of new patients, including some Hollywood stars.
Ooh.
There's so much success, in fact, that Brinkley decided to relocate his clinic to LA. But before he can, the California Medical Board denied his application to practice medicine in the state after a doctor named Morris Fishbane, our old guy, pointed out to them that most of Brinkley's resume was lies and exaggerations. So, didn't pan out in California.
No.
But Brinkley returns to Kansas, and he's undeterred because he has a big new idea that he got from his time in LA. So while he was in LA, Brinkley toured a radio station and immediately realized the advertising power of radio. So in 1923, Brinkley opened his own radio station called KFKB, which either stands for Kansas First, Kansas Best, or Kansas Folks Know Best. Both of them great. Come on. We're going Kansas supremacy, baby.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
On this radio station, Brinkley would talk for hours every day promoting his goat gland surgery. He would also occasionally feature entertainment such as military bands, astrological forecasts, storytelling, and music including native Hawaiian songs, gospel music, and some early country music. The radio station started attracting tons of new patients, and in a very smart move, Brinkley decided to share his new success with the town of Milford. So he paid for new sidewalks and new sewage systems to be built. He built apartments and a new post office by his clinic for patients and employees to use. And he even sponsored a local baseball team called the Brinkley Goats, which, man, the size of the ego on this guy. They're not even like the Milford Goats. They're the Brinkley Goats.
That's perfect.
He's like my own last name on the town team.
I'm so happy that he's going all in on goats.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this man knew that goats will be his legacy, and he wanted that to become his legacy. I respect him for that a lot.
He knows that that's what's going to make him famous. And he really is, as far as he's known across the country, he's known as the goat gland doctor. So that's like completely tied to him. And this seems to work pretty well in Kansas because everyone really loves Dr. Brinkley. Somehow he even manages to get bestowed the rank of admiral in the Kansas Navy, which I didn't know you could get bestowed a rank in the Navy. I also didn't know Kansas had a Navy, but that's a thing that happened. So that's cool.
I didn't know. I didn't know a landlocked state could have a navy.
Well, he's an admiral in it. That's all you need to know.
Apparently, yeah, good.
While Dr. Brinkley's popularity grows from his radio advertisements, things are starting to change in the medical world. Newspapers began publishing stories about these shady diploma mills selling medical degrees, which you may remember is where he got his medical degree, including some stories in the St. Louis Star and the Kansas City Journal-Post. So this is close to home for him. And Dr. Morris Fishbane has also been giving speeches and writing articles for the American Medical Association Journal, specifically talking about Brinkley being a fraud and prescribing this useless surgery. And then in 1924, a grand jury in San Francisco handed down indictments for 19 people involved in buying or selling fake medical degrees, including John Brinkley. And this is actually most likely a result of the California Medical Board seeing Brinkley's mostly fake resume. So this is kind of directly, domino from Morris Fishbane intervening.
Yeah, going back from Morris Fishbane, yeah.
Now, obviously, John Brinkley did not turn himself in. So when the agents from California traveled to Kansas to arrest Brinkley, the governor of Kansas refused to extradite him because he made the state too much money. So the agents are just forced to go home empty-handed. After this, Brinkley gets on his radio station to brag how he's won against the American Medical Association and Morris Fishbane. And honestly, it seems like people agree with this because following this, Brinkley became even more successful, even receiving patients from around the world.
All you goats in the U.S. better watch out, because Dr. Brinkley is coming for you.
We've got a new demand for glands.
Dude, goat glands are gonna be more valuable than gold at this point.
Exactly.
Forget the gold standard. Give me gold testicles.
We're on the goat gland standard. Come on.
Ooh, hell yeah.
Now, despite the success, Brinkley did know that he was going to need a new fake medical degree because the medical industry was kind of catching up to him.
God forbid he get a real one.
Yeah, seriously. So, in 1925, he traveled to Europe looking for honorary degrees, basically like a university that would just hand him a degree. He got turned away from several universities in the UK before he finally found a willing university in Pavia, Italy. And so he did get a degree from them. But another doctor named Max Thorek heard about Brinkley's Italian degree, and Thorek had actually formerly been a teacher to both John Brinkley and Morris Fishbane, so he's very connected to this issue.
Oh.
Thorek went and pressured the Italian government to rescind Brinkley's degree, and apparently he did this with so much force that the complaint evidently went all the way to the top, and Brinkley's medical degree was eventually revoked by then Prime Minister Benito Mussolini.
What? Whoa.
Yeah, so Benito Mussolini's getting in here to personally try to put a stop to the goat gland doctor.
Benito Mussolini's like, why am I not getting this?
You know, people don't often remember that about him. They say, well, you know, he made the trains run on time, but you got to forget what he did before making the trains run on time was put a stop to the goat gland surgery.
Maybe that's what he needed. Maybe if he had gotten goat gland surgery, he wouldn't have done the atrocities he did.
He just needed more vigor? That's what you think?
I think everyone was just lacking foresight, you know? Maybe put a little bit of trust in goat glands. John Hinckley certainly did.
I think the big issue here is that their advertisement, the ram that am with every lamb, just doesn't translate well to Italian, probably.
Yeah. Doesn't really have the same catchy nature to it.
Yeah, so they do kind of put a stop to this Italian degree. It doesn't actually end up mattering a ton because Brinkley still claims to have this degree for the rest of his life. And, you know, in this time, there's not a lot of fact-checking going on, so he's probably fairly successful with that.
Right, yeah.
Now, aside from that, remember our old boy, Morris Fishbane, he hasn't given up. He's still giving speeches and writing articles about Brinkley's former patients who had gotten sicker or died after seeing him. The problem here is that, you know, there's a lot of people sounding the alarm, but the American Medical Association's journal is really only read by doctors, and Brinkley's doing broadcasts on radio stations that are going directly into people's homes. So there's this weird point in time while average people are believing that goat testicle surgery could change their lives, doctors are well aware that it's both useless and dangerous, but no one wants to listen because medical newspaper boring.
God, this man can really sell me some goat testicles. Oh.
I feel like the AMA just underestimated the power of the ram that am with every lamb. Okay, that turns out the sales.
Kansas folk really do know best.
Kansas folk know best. Sorry, y'all. this seems like, maybe it could go on forever for John Brinkley, but unfortunately in 1930, he maybe flew a little bit too close to the sun. Brinkley's first mistake was that he started having a medical question box on his radio show where he would read medical complaints sent in by listeners and then prescribe medicines. And these medicines could, of course, only be found at pharmacies associated with Brinkley and extremely overpriced. Brinkley also, of course, gets a cut of these sales. This actually profited him an estimated $760,000 a year, which is just under $13 million in modern money. So, as schemy as this is, maybe it was worth it for him. But between the growing number of patients showing up at other doctors' offices saying Brinkley's medications had made them worse, and the drug companies that are pretty annoyed that their drugs are being regularly misprescribed, a lot of heat from this gets drawn Brinkley's way. Now, the second mistake he made was that his radio station got so big that it began competing with a radio station owned by the Kansas City Star. In response to this, the Kansas City Star started broadcasting reports exposing Brinkley's malpractice. And all of this bad publicity culminated in 1930 when the Kansas Medical Board had a formal hearing to decide whether or not Dr. Brinkley's medical license should be revoked. The hearing largely focused on the fact that Brinkley had signed 42 death certificates for people who were only minorly sick or completely healthy when they'd come into his clinic. So, on paper, it kind of looks like he basically has killed 42 people at least here.
Jesus.
And probably due to this, the board decided to revoke his medical license. Then, 6 months later, the Federal Radio Commission refused to renew Brinkley's broadcasting license because they found that his broadcasts were mostly advertisements. And there's an interesting little note here, Luis, that you may actually know about, that after this, Brinkley tried to sue the Federal Radio Commission, but the courts ruled against him, and the case, KFKB Broadcasting Association v. Federal Radio Commission, became standard broadcasting law. So this is why there are rules now for what you can and can't say for advertising and when you can do it and when you have to announce that you're advertising. You are, of course, a former radio host, so I don't know if this is maybe something that you've heard in passing before.
Yeah, that's wild. Did not know this. You're appealing to my sensibilities, Kurt. That's dangerous.
I really am. And there's another plot point in here you're really going to love. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm so excited for it. Let's keep going. Okay, so John Brinkley does what many men who have just lost both their medical license and their broadcasting license do. He decides to run for governor of Kansas.
Naturally, of course.
Naturally.
That was the next step, yeah.
He actually announces this only 3 days after losing his medical license, so he gets a few months of radio promo before they pull his license for that. And his angle here is that basically if he's governor, he can appoint new members of the medical board who will reinstate his license. So this is all like a means to an end for him to keep implanting goat testicles. I mean, that's what it's all about, baby.
At the end of the day, it's just goat testicles, isn't it?
It really is. So Brinkley campaigned alongside country music stars that had performed on KFKB. This really gave him a lot of clout. He also rented a plane and a pilot to fly him around Kansas for campaign rallies.
Come on.
It really seems like the main goal of Brinkley's campaign was to entertain people. And there's even this fun story about when a journalist was critical of Brinkley's qualifications to serve in office, Brinkley sent him a goat, like a whole live goat.
Ooh.
I don't know if this is just like a weird move or if he's calling him an impotent man, but either way, this is actually kind of a pretty baller move for Kansas politics,
That's pretty cool. Maybe it's a compliment, It's like, hey, here's your goat. Congrats.
Open to interpretation.
Yeah.
So because Brinkley had declared his candidacy pretty late in the race, his name had to be written in. He was too late to get on the ballot. And there was a last-minute rule change that caused 40,000 votes cast for Brinkley to be thrown out. Basically, this rule change was just that, like, his name had to be written exactly in a certain way. So 40,000 votes that had his name written slightly incorrectly were thrown out. And had these votes not been thrown out, Brinkley would have won. But instead, he lost the race.
Whoa.
Perhaps at this point, Brinkley realized that the system was just a little too powerful. He wasn't going to win directly against the federal government. He needed to go somewhere that the U.S. government couldn't get to him. And Luis, where do people go when they want to be outside the reach of the U.S. government?
Oh, please tell me it's my beautiful homeland.
It's Mexico, baby. Come on.
Yes, of course. Why do you think I'm there now?
Exactly. So Brinkley put two of his proteges in charge of the Milford Clinic and moved to Del Rio, Texas, which is a small town just across the border from Mexico. The Mexican government was pretty eager to break into radio broadcasting, so it didn't take much convincing for them to sign off on construction of Brinkley's radio station on the Mexican side of the border, and Brinkley calls this station the Sunshine Station Between Nations. It features two 300-foot broadcasting towers, and the Mexican government also signed off on gradually larger and larger wattages until Brinkley Brinkley was permitted to broadcast at 1 million watts.
Whoa.
Luis, our aforementioned radio expert, does the number 1 million watts mean anything to you? Do you know much about radio broadcast power?
I feel like that's a lot, to be honest.
It is a lot.
Yeah, that's plenty. I mean, most radio stations, if you hear them saying they're broadcasting at like, I don't know, a couple thousand watts. Really, a million is so much, Kurt, frankly. That's going out with a lot of power.
It is so much. And let me tell you exactly how much it is. So 1 million watts made Brinkley's radio station the most powerful broadcast on the planet. On a clear night, you could pick it up in Canada. People reported that the signal caused car headlights to turn on, mattress springs to hum, and the broadcast to bleed into people's phone conversations. And local farmers claimed they didn't need a radio to listen to Brinkley because they could hear the broadcast through their metal fence posts and their dentures.
Oh, God.
This man is now broadcasting with the voice of God, basically. What does he do with this power, you may ask?
He asked his wife to get back together with him.
No, number one, he tries to run for governor of Kansas again in 1932
Yes.
and 1934, but he loses both times.
Come on.
Other than that, it's basically just a bigger version of KFKB. He spends his time advertising his prescriptions and surgeries. He also sells ad slots to other medical grifters to promote their concoctions, elixirs, and items such as crazy water crystals and an autographed picture of Jesus Christ.
Oh?
Yeah.
It's like the Bible signed by the author.
Yeah, seriously. And he also hosts tons of up-and-coming country music artists, including Patsy Montana, Red Foley, Gene Autry, Jimmy Rogers, and the Carter family. I'll tell you, Luis, even with my rural backgrounds, I don't really recognize any of those names, but I suspect some people will.
I recognize Gene Autry.
He's big in the country music scene.
Wow.
So much so that Del Rio becomes unofficially known as Hillbilly Hollywood, which is just great.
Awesome.
Now, during this time, Brinkley's actually still going back and forth between Milford, Kansas, and Del Rio. So to accommodate his schedule, he starts broadcasting via phone so he can do it from anywhere. So basically, he's like calling into his own radio show. In response to this, Congress passed a law literally known as the Brinkley Act in 1932, making it illegal to broadcast over the phone. So it's just like a law for this one guy.
Jeez.
In response to this, Brinkley said, "No problem, guys. I'll just invent the concept of pre-recorded shows." So no one had ever thought to pre-record a show, but he's like, you don't want me to call in and do it live? I'll just record it ahead of time and broadcast it.
What?
And so this accommodates his schedule so he can still be overseeing goat testicle surgery in Kansas while broadcasting from Mexico.
That's fantastic. I'm floored. My jaw is on the floor. This is great.
Yeah, you know, Luis, again, our radio guy. What do you think of his radio show style, his broadcasting techniques? Are you a fan of this?
I respect it. I feel like I would do this. As someone that did a pre-recorded show for nearly a year, if not more than a year, and then also someone that finds grifting fascinating, this is a dream come true.
You're all the puzzle pieces of this man. You just got to put them together.
I'm still stuck on the 1 million watts of of radio power.
Yeah, like why?
You know,
Why do you
just
want to
putting their ears to metal? Let me tune into my radio show with my dentures.
Just trying to have a phone conversation with your aunt and you got goat testicle advertisements bleeding in there. That's insane.
Hold on, let me go chew some aluminum foil so I can tune in to being sold vitamin pills that do nothing,
So by the time 1934 rolls around, the U.S. government successfully pressured Mexico into shutting down Brinkley's radio station. But truthfully, at this point, I don't think Brinkley really cared because he's got tons of money. He can still practice medicine in Texas. So he continues operating the clinic he has in Del Rio. He's still doing these goat testicle surgeries, but he also does a lot of other stuff like his own variation of vasectomy or something that he calls, quote, prostate rejuvenation. So, he's branching out a little bit here.
He gives you a goat prostate.
That's an industry secret, Luis. They came after him hard for the goat testicle thing. He's not announcing any more of what he's implanting.
Right, yeah.
He also opens a clinic in San Juan, Texas, specializing in the colon. So, that's fun for him. In 1936, Brinkley had made enough money that he built a mansion for himself and his wife in Del Rio. And this covered 16 acres, had a dozen Cadillacs, a greenhouse, and a fountain garden populated by exotic animals imported from the Galapagos Islands, and of course, a pool with a diving board. And they probably could have lived happily ever after if it were not for Morris Fishbane. Dr. Morris Fishbane back again.
He's still around?
Oh,
Come
he's not
on.
giving up.
Get
He's not
over it,
giving up.
man. Get over it.
In 1938, Fishbane published a 2-part series called Modern Medical Charlatans, and this detailed Brinkley's bogus procedures and fraudulent credentials pretty extensively. In response to this, Brinkley sued Fishbane for libel, and after only a few days in court, the jury ruled that Fishbane was absolutely spot on. This guy is a total fraud. And this ruling unleashed a flood of lawsuits on Brinkley, which totaled an estimated $3 million in damages. At the same time, the IRS began investigating Brinkley for tax fraud, and Brinkley pretty quickly declared bankruptcy in 1941.
Damn.
Then shortly after this, the U.S. Post Office opened an investigation into him for mail fraud. But
Damn.
at this point, Brinkley probably was not so concerned with that because he had actually become a hospital patient himself. He suffered 3 heart attacks and had to have his leg amputated due to poor circulation. And on May 26, 1942, John Brinkley died penniless of heart failure in a hospital in San Antonio, Texas at the age of 57, before his mail fraud trial could even come to date. So, he burned bright, and he got to 57, which I think that's pretty good for 1942. Yeah. But he did certainly burn out before the end.
I mean, he was never found guilty of mail fraud. So,
right, just all the other stuff.
Not a criminal. Nah, come on.
Nah.
But who's counting? Not me. Absolutely not me.
Maybe a few wrongful deaths, but mail fraud, you're not going to stick that to him.
No, come on.
So what do you think of that, Luis? Because, I feel like, let me lay it out, because there's a layer of like, this is insane, right? On several different levels. We got goat testicle surgery. We're using Mexico to get around the U.S. government. But there's also some weird stuff of like, a lot of this story takes place in Missouri, around St. Louis, which is places we both know well. We both went to Loyola. Mm-hmm. Also, I have an interesting note that Max Storek, the doctor who finally got Benito Mussolini's ear to resend the medical degree, ended up becoming kind of the father of some modern surgical practices. So he actually opened several hospitals in Chicago. One of them I literally just saw the other day in Andersonville, right next to me. And if you've ever heard of the Museum of Surgery in Chicago, that's also his deal. Boy. So this is a story that we've been like bumping into our whole lives and not realized how close we were to the goat testicle doctor, the goat gland specialist.
Not paid our respects. I mean, me as a bona fide radio boy, as well as someone that lived in Chicago, St. Louis, and also Mexico, and someone who's a fan of goat testicles, it feels tailor-made for me. And also I think we've gone intergenerational with this story. We started with his dad. Like, come on. Like, why do I know the detail that he's the bastard child of his aunt's husband? I don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mess. But yeah, we again, his father was a medic in the Civil War. So we're starting from a point of, Civil War era medicine, and we're getting all the way up to like you and I have kind of been bumping into the remnants of this guy doing goat testicle surgery all through the 20s and 30s.
Listen, he was just also doing Civil War surgery in the 1940s. He just didn't update. He didn't update his rule book. Oh, that's fantastic, Kurt.
And I would say, given that you've done you've done your time on the radio,
I've done time.
And odds are you've probably heard someone mention KFKB Broadcasting v. whatever at some point before in reference to advertising rules and stuff. So you had the chance to learn about the goat testicle surgery all this time, but you didn't know it.
All this time. Yeah, all this time I was blind.
In this case, ignorance was not bliss. We finally found it. Ignorance was not bliss.
You know what they say, there are cathedrals everywhere with anyone with eyes to see. I did not have eyes to see. This wonderful cathedral built not of stone, not of mortar, but rather goat glands, Mexican radio stations, and just a dash of fascism.
Yes. So, Luis, I feel like we've really gone through quite a journey today. I mean, not to mention also we started all the way back with some Vikings. We were all into raiding kingdoms in Europe, and then we had to learn a lot about various surgeries to restore the vigor of men and electric medicine from Germany. Is there anything you got to say about all this now that you're kind of thinking of it all together?
That's the problem, Kurt. You've got me without words because you're right. I for a second I had forgotten we even did the Viking story.
Yeah.
And for some reason during the second story, my brain was constantly saying Spear of Destiny, and I'm going to be honest with you, Kurt, I didn't remember why until just now. But no, I mean, you were right when you said that first story was a little on the short end, but do not worry, be not afraid. because here comes the big one. The big one did indeed come.
John Brinkley keeps giving, dude. He keeps giving.
They really did. And I realized, too, at some point I got confused and named him John Hinckley. But that's not the same man we're talking about.
No, he had too much other stuff going on. He didn't have time for that business. He was just into the medical stuff.
He didn't have anything to do with President Reagan, with trying to assassinate Reagan.
No, nor Jodie Foster.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Wow. No, those are wonderful stories, Kurt. I mean, you've done it again. You're getting me hyped for specific people, and for people that did just these random acts around history.
So before we move on to our last phase here, Luis, let me tell you, because you famously are, always aligning yourself with our protagonist. Do you see yourself more as an Ivar the Boneless getting drunk and flying into a rage that breaks your own legs, or are you John Brinkley broadcasting from Mexico with the voice of God so you can implant goat testicles?
Well, I do feel, I do have a mild God complex, and I would love to say that I would be willing or able to do the things John Brinkley did, or half the things that John Brinkley did. It takes some sort of mad genius to be really good at grifting and really good at trying to achieve your goals, which I know that I'm both A, not that cunning, in my opinion, and B, not that responsible to even keep up with my own grifts. Like I would run out of energy or commitment to doing the type of things that John Brinkley did. And conversely, I see myself consuming miscellaneous items, ingesting them, going into a rage, and then having a 3-day long hangover.
Yeah.
Like I do picture myself in that situation, and that's something more akin of the things that I would do. However, that speaks on my character. That's not up to me to decide. I will leave that up with history and the good people that listen to the show. But I find myself identifying more with Ivar the Boneless, although I'm a little bit more bone in. I do have sturdy legs, and the foundations of my berserker rage are not built on shaky ground, much like Ivar's legs. But no, it's fantastic. I don't think John Brinkley is a charismatic nor a positive figure in history. He was just a fraudster trying to get his way. However, it's impossible to not be impressed, by everything he did.
You got to give him credit for not giving up. He just decided to get more insane every time.
Yeah, which I frankly respect.
Now that you're saying it, I can kind of see it, because it's like when he's going back and forth between Mexico and Kansas and pre-recording stuff, like jousting with Congress. It's pretty wriggly, but it is quite a lot of thinking and planning.
Yeah.
And I do see you more as the like, hey, I don't like that. Let me force feed this guy grapes and then shake him till he vomits. I can see that being the design you come up with on the spot.
Yeah. More of a on-the-spot guy. Again, I am not cunning. I'm not saying I'm not smart. I'm more of a thinking on my feet guy. I'm not a scheming guy. As much as we love our schemes in this show, I know I would not be one to scheme.
Well, let's put the thinking on your feet to the test in our least favorite part of this podcast, which is
deliberation.
So, Luis, as we were just saying, first I told you the story of Ivar the Boneless and his famed sword he had passed down, Heitersfigi, a.k.a. Hot Rod, and the times he had with it being just an insane lunatic with quite a temper in Normandy, and then later maybe the Nazis got in there a little bit.
Maybe, perhaps.
And then I told you about John Brinkley, who's given electric medicine from Germany, goat testicles, radio broadcast, whatever you want. This guy's got it, okay? Don't try to stop him, because he just simply is too vigorous for the U.S. government until he died penniless at the end. I guess not then, but until that, it's going well.
It's the American dream.
It's the American dream.
Oh, man. Kurt, well, listen, I hate to be this guy, Kurt, but I have a sinking feeling in my brain. I am of the idea that you found out about John Brinkley and got really excited to tell me this story, which I understand. Something that I do as well with you. But I feel like you had come up with this man and said, I need another story. What can I tell him? And made up quickly the Ivar the Boneless story, the sword story on the spot. just as a pretext to tell me about the goat gland doctor, which is not a judgment on your end, Kurt. I frankly think that's awesome and I respect it. But I feel like it's one of those stories where if this is not real, Kurt, the amount of detail in life, like how do we know that he was the product of a sixth wife and then all of the child escaping, kidnapping to Canada and returning like that? I feel like I know this man. I feel like I understand this man. I feel like I've been through his head. I've been through his entire life. For you to pull the rug from under me and tell me that this is not a real person that lived, it would be catastrophic for my mental health. And it certainly, I would not be dealing really well with it. That said, certain things about the story kind of confuse me a bit, or not confuse me, but I'm hesitant to believe them. For example, all of the different getting back together and returning with wife and child, etc., and all these details to give them a little more character, that they seem a little too fiction novel, right? Which maybe it's just that impressive, right? Also, 1 million watts, Kurt. That is so much.
1 million watts.
1 million watts is absurd amount of watts.
It is.
Like, you could hear this through the entirety of Mexico if that was the case.
Yeah, no, you could, because if people could pick it up on Canada on a clear night, then definitely it's getting the entirety of Mexico.
Which, like, I respect. Also, Mexico is post-revolution at this point, so yeah, maybe the radio industry was not huge, but at the same time, 1 million watts, Kurt. I feel like that you walk past the tower and you drop dead.
Just liquefied.
Immediately.
That's why I had to call in. He can't be within a 5-mile radius when it's broadcasting.
In his trial with Congress, he's like, Your Honor, you don't understand. I have to call in or else I will perish. It's like the silent zone in the U.S. like silent zone where because there's a big radar, you're not allowed to turn on any electronics. He artificially made a silent zone because no electronics were turned on next to this antenna.
Yeah, seriously, everything in a 5-mile radius is just destroyed, just leveled.
But at the same time, part of me likes to believe that probably that hasn't been done since because it's just that ridiculous. And you saying that he was a pioneer of regulations on radio broadcasting, that leads me to that conclusion.
Pioneer of regulations is an interesting way to say it, because he's more like the bad kid who found a new way to break the rules, and then they had to specifically say you can't do this anymore.
I'm an optimist, Kurt. Of course I'm going to call that type of person a pioneer in lawmaking. But because of that, because I'm telling you, I feel like this man is real, and I feel like you just wanted to tell me a story, but needed something else to tell me. And why you had the Viking story is why I'm going to believe that John Brinkley Jr. was a real man. And if he's not, Kurt, I'm going to go on a berserk rage. I hate to say. So that's my final answer. Please, oh please, let me know the truth.
Well, before I answer, I want to slightly correct you, because actually this does make it even better, that I think he's not technically Junior because he has the middle name Romulus. Don't forget, he's got the Romulus call out in there.
I forgot about Romulus. Oh, come on.
Now,
jeez.
That being said, you got me dead to rights, Luis. I mean, what can I say? I can't compete with this John Brinkley story. I'm never going to come up with something like that. Come on, the guy's broadcasting from Mexico with the goat testicles. That's insane.
Yeah, seriously.
So yeah, I think you're pretty spot on. I tried to pick a shorter story, and it is true. One of the reasons we haven't told Viking stories is because it's hard to find definitive history on this. So
right,
I tried to pick something that logically should have less detail and be shorter, and I thought I'd take my chances. But like I said, nothing can ruin my mood, because either way, I was just so excited to tell you, honestly, both these stories, because I knew you were gonna love John Brinkley, but also I think Hot Rod is pretty fun.
Yeah, that's good. Hot Rod was an incredible detail that got me really hyped. And I don't want you to take this as a loss, Kurt, at all, because I think this is a win for both of us. You learning about this man and you telling me about this man, I think we are better people for it.
Absolutely.
Arguably.
So let me first tell you what the true parts of the Viking story were, because there was actually some truth in here.
Please.
And some of this stuff you got to take a little bit with a grain of salt, because again, fictional accounts based on history, blah, blah, blah. Ragnar Lothbrok was a real Viking. He did actually carry out the Paris siege of 845 himself. He didn't die in that. He died later, actually allegedly from being cast into a pit of snakes snakes, and then
Ah.
in revenge, his sons went and blood eagled someone. So maybe the blood eagle did happen. Unclear. Ragnar's son's name, he actually did have sons named Sigurd Snake and Eye, Vitsirk Bjorn Ironside, and Ivar the Boneless. Ivar the Boneless was allegedly a berserker, and the Nazis did search for some archaeological artifacts, including successfully finding the Spear of Destiny, which, it's interesting you say you can't get it off your mind, Luis, because I learned while researching this that as a child, Hitler saw the Spear of Destiny in a museum and claimed he had some sort of vision that led him to his future actions.
Oh, no.
So let me know if the Spear of Destiny persists with you, because maybe we gotta keep a close eye on that. But
another episode, another moment of Kurt comparing me to Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the obligatory. We got to get it in there somewhere. But that being said, I've been bottled up for weeks waiting to talk about this Goat Testicle Doctor story with you. I mean, this is just insane, right?
That's great. That's so good.
Our boy John Romulus Brinkley, he did it all, and it's crazy because I feel like this feels like a story I would have wanted to make up, where he's radio broadcasting from Mexico and is in St. Louis and went to Loyola Medical School. But yeah, it's just nice how this is like a crazy story that is kind of through a few degrees of separation related to us.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, the fact that he went to Mexico, was a radio man, went to Mexico to do radio stuff, then did the whole Chicago living there and had close ties to St. Louis. It really feels like you were directing this at me, but sometimes it's just history does it for you.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I think the other interesting part of this is that when you see the whole thing put together, it really encompasses how these types of characters in history can seem extremely meaningless and also extremely influential, because if you look at him when he's doing his medicine man stuff and, going around and trying to get a degree in Italy and implanting goat testicles into a farm or whatever, you're like, why do we know all this about this guy and not somebody who did something important? But at the same time,
right.
Every day the advertising laws we have and the broadcasting laws and even, things that are like the regulation of the medical industry, he precipitated a lot of that, the rules about radio, all these things that are kind of like the invisible rules in our world. A lot of times it's the weirdos like this who made that happen, because they're the ones who force the system to make some regulation.
Pioneers.
Yeah, exactly. He's a regulation pioneer. So, Little Domino, Greenville Electrico, doctors putting the electric medicine from Germany into people for $800 a pop. Big Domino, the current advertising laws that we just take as given and granted. If you're an American, at least.
Right.
Like I said, I can't compete with that because it's too much fun and it's too perfect of a historical story. History is always going to be better than you could come up with at the end of the day when you find the really good ones. So
seriously.
I gave it my best shot, but that's why I say I don't feel bad about losing that one to you. That makes it 3 for you and 0 for me, which is getting a little spooky here. But like I said, I'm still flying high.
As you should, Kurt. As you should.
That being said, everyone, hope you enjoyed learning about some goat testicles and the hot rod. If you want to get more content from the episodes, we'll post some pictures of John Brinkley and some of the content from his life on our social medias. We're on Instagram at UnbelievablePod and Twitter at UnbelievablePC. And if you're a Chicago listener, we'll be on 88.7 WLUW Sundays at 1 p.m. If you want to tune in and listen to some of our old episodes, come support us.
It's not 1 million watts. Don't worry.
It's not 1 million watts. You will not get it in your dentures. You're actually going to have to turn the radio on. Sorry. We're working on it. That being said, everyone, have a great day. And remember, if you want to be the ram that am with every lamb and have vigor coming out of your ears, just pop that goat testicle in there, baby. Come on. Hey, can't hurt, all right? It's worked so far. Bye, y'all.
See ya.